If we shrink ourselves for others' comfort, we might feel resentful when others don't shrink themselves for our comfort. When in truth, a healthier balance comes from giving ourselves permission to take up more space. That comes from Haley Page McGee. In this episode, we're going to talk about boundaries in your business, which not only protect your energy, but they also allow you to show up better for others in your life too. Welcome to Content with Character, the weekly podcast that'll give you the momentum you need to create content with more ease, clarity, and laughter. I'm your host, content copywriter Emily Aborn, and I'm all about unconventional marketing approaches. I believe in your big ideas, and I'm excited to help you share them in a way that's distinctly you. Hello, welcome back. I am reporting live today from the field, absolutely whooped. It's a good whooped, but here are some behind the scenes over here of what's been happening in copywriting, content marketing, consulting, podcaster world. In the past month alone, I have written website copy for an acupuncturist, psychologist, college counselor, 3 interior designers. I've mentored and done strategy sessions. I've planned a 90-minute workshop on planning, which is coming up this Friday, December 13th. I helped a client take steps to launching his podcast. I've written newsletters and write-ups, recorded podcast episodes through the end of the year with this recording session right now, guested on podcasts, written emails, made posts, enjoyed family time for Thanksgiving, worked on my own website copy and my own SEO. And I even took a course to elevate my personality-filled copy skills even more. Now, this is not even adding in all the personal stuff, like the little day-to-day, walking my dog, family visits to Maine, getting together with my friends, keeping my head on straight at the grocery store. It is a lot. And I'm not sharing this to share, oh, look how much I'm doing. Look how much I've done. I'm saying my to-do list is long, and so is yours. Well, you are doing a lot. I am doing a lot. We are doing a lot. And it's become more abundantly clear to me this year, more than ever. In order to do a lot and not do quite as much, let's just say, I need to get better at creating boundaries that are going to work to support my capacity. And I would imagine you might find yourself in this position too, especially if this episode piqued your interest. We have to create boundaries that work to support our capacity, or else we find ourselves week after week overcommitting. Overcommitting then makes us very sleepy or very tired or very resentful or frustrated or overwhelmed or anxious. The list goes on, depending on how you deal with overcommitment and overwhelm. So as I was reviewing my past year and mapping out my coming year, I decided that I really need to get serious, seriously serious about my boundaries in 2025. Now, not only do I need to draw some distinct lines in the sand, but my business and my clients and also my family and my friends, and you know what? Myself. We all need me to do that. Boundaries are a toughie for some of us because if you're like me, you have a soft spot in your heart and you just want to make everyone's day, deliver all the things to everybody. But realistically, we cannot do that because when we try, we end up pouring from a cup that is so drained that we don't know what to do with ourselves. So we have to understand what does that cup have to give, right? What's our capacity? And then we can set boundaries in place to actually support that capacity. Then boundaries are, once you've established them, you have to then commit to yourself. You have to have your own back to not allow them to be trampled. So it was highly relevant for me, and I thought that it was a good time of year to offer you some strategies on boundaries, for your business, okay? So in this episode, I'm going to give you 7 steps you can actually take. I'm talking tangible steps you can take to implement some boundaries that will support your capacity. And then as far as not overcommitting and not letting people overstep those boundaries, we're just going to have to hold each other accountable on that. I'll check in with you, you check in with me, but we are going to hold each other to it. So first, we're going to start by getting into just some different types of boundaries. Now, this is not an extensive list. These are going to be ones specific to our business. I am an avid student in the area of setting boundaries. I am not an expert at setting boundaries. This is a learn with me episode and not a I know all the answers episode. Not that any of my episodes are like that, but anyway, I will try to give examples where I can. And I'm going to try to make this like really relevant, really valuable for you. And I also, like I said, I want to give you like real steps you can take, like real actions you can actually take to implement some boundaries. Know that this is always a conversation. So if anything you hear jumps out at you, or you have ideas or more thoughts, please reach out and let me know. And I also, of course, want to hear if it inspires you or propels you to make some sort of change. If you ever want to find me, contact me, learn more about me, I am, like I said, a copywriter, podcast host, and content marketing consultant. You can find all of my links in the show notes, and we can connect wherever you enjoy connecting. So let's start by getting into the different types of boundaries, and then we'll actually go through those steps you can take to implement them for yourself. Like I said, this is not an extensive list, but these are the ones I felt were most applicable to us as business owners, okay? So the first one is time boundaries, and you don't need me to tell you that time is our most precious resource. So without those clear boundaries on our time, I would say without making time have a job, it is easy for work to bleed into personal time, or for clients to expect you to be available 24/7, or for you to give away all your time to things that are not work related, and then you find yourself up overwhelms creek. I have seen it time and time again, and I also have learned it from personal experience. Sometimes the only way to get yourself out of overwhelm is to sit your butt down and get a bunch of work done. And of course, on the flip side, sometimes you're working way too much and you need to get out and go have some fun. So some time boundaries, I'll just give you some examples and we'll get more into these as we go through those steps, but setting specific working hours and sticking to those working hours. I love to allocate deep work blocks for focused tasks without interruption. That would be like not task switching, right? Which really personally for me, really affects me. Another one is using a scheduler or like an automatic calendar booking system that can really reinforce those boundaries that you establish. I really do recommend this. With full disclosure, I don't use one because I kind of have, I'm just going to say I have a lot of outside calendars influencing mine. And so it kind of gets messy, and I've tried it and it doesn't really work for me. So I do a manual approach, but I really have to hold myself to what I've set out for booking in a week. And this year I have been terrible at that, but next year is the line in the sand. Another way to another example of setting time boundaries is setting boundaries around when you'll respond to emails or messages. So even if your client work hours are 8 to 5, doesn't necessarily mean that someone is going to get a response from you instantly, right? So you might need to create boundaries around like how long it takes you, or when you actually sit down and focus on emails and messages and follow-ups. Totally great way to establish time boundaries for yourself. The second area of boundaries is emotional boundaries. Now, emotional boundaries, like a little bit intangible, yes, but let me just say that emotional labor, or emotional load, I think is another way to say it, or mental load, it can be very draining. Meaning, if you are working with somebody who, let's say, for example, like offloads all of their personal challenges or all their negativity on you when you're working with them, that can be really hard emotionally. It can be hard to stay in your own emotional state that you would like to maintain. Now, it's not that we don't want to be nice and compassionate and caring and helpful, and we also need to know when we can detach ourselves emotionally. This could be from client outcomes, right? It could be like, I have to not allow my worth to be wrapped up in what happens with their business. But it may also be like limitations on how much personal information you guys are exchanging, or you're allowing them to share with you. It may be recognizing that somebody you're working with, they have really negative behavior, or it just like time and time again, it's dragging you down and starting to affect your mental health. So you then have to kind of consider, do I need to put some boundaries up here? What are the implications for me and my business and how we're going to work together? So emotional boundaries are a real thing, and they do exist for us in our business worlds as well as our personal worlds. The next one is client/project/customer boundaries. Probably the very first thing I learned in this world of solopreneurship is that without clear boundaries, scope creep aka demanding clients. They may not even know they're doing it, right? But they can consume more time and energy than you have and also than you planned. Basically, if you give it, people honestly, they just don't know better. They will take it. And if you give them an inch, they will take a mile. They may even take more of that. So again, this is not like anybody doing anything wrong. And I think that there's also a time to be generous. There's a time to over deliver, but protecting yourself up front with really clear project, product, client guidelines, processes, and boundaries can super set you up for success. And that might look like clearly defining those deliverables, clearly defining timelines, okay, like right from the get-go. I'm talking in contracts, enforcing policies around revisions or late payments or cancellations or schedule changes, like all of those kinds of things can help you to protect those boundaries. And then also, people who are trying to get advice or support and it's just like wildly outside of your agreed scope of work, you might redirect them. You might offer them, we can do that for an additional fee, something like that. So it might sound, like I said, cold or mean. I assure you it's not. And it's as easy as putting some of these things into your contracts and agreements. You can always make exceptions, but it's so much easier to have the boundary in writing from the get-go. And I think it's fair and it's like to be expected. So give yourself that. Like, this is really for you. I mean, it is for them to see it written out, but it is also for you to be able to have that to go back to. The third one is digital boundaries. I recently learned that I need some better digital boundaries. If you heard last week, I recently shared a little bit on how I kind of set some of those for myself on social media. I also did an experiment recently where I was turning my phone off at 7 o'clock at night, and I loved it. I think I need to bring that back. I'm trying to find like a good solution for like meditation when I'm going to do all that, because I do use an app for that. But anyway, my point is not to get you in the weeds of my evening routine. Constant connectivity can really lead us to burnout and blurred lines between work and personal life. So it can help you to create some digital boundaries. I also think that like it might cause you to be more in the mode of imposter syndrome or anxiety or comparison or negativity or overwhelm, depending on how you experience these apps and these devices, right? So some examples of like some simple digital boundaries we can start setting for ourselves. Just setting designated times to check email or social media. Turning off those notifications. I don't have like any sound notifications on my phone apart from the ringer and text and then like a group chat with my family. No Messenger, no Instagram, no Facebook, no Voxer, none of that. Voxer is honestly the worst sound in the world. But if somebody wants me, there's a good chance that I'm not going to see it for a little while. If I'm at my computer, maybe, or if they email me, maybe. So what I'm suggesting is that digital boundaries are designed for your unique business, depending on the nature of it. And I would say that like 99% of the time, things that people are reaching out to you can usually wait. So it's okay to kind of put in those designated times that you want to check things. It also helps you show up like a little bit more intentionally, I think, when you do get on the apps or engage with other people. So it's a to consider for you. These are all things to consider, okay? Another way to do this is I've seen people have like separate devices or separate accounts for work and personal use. So I know a lot of folks do it. It's a little overwhelming to me personally. I like less. I don't like a lot of things to manage, but for some people, it works out exactly perfectly and it's just what they need. And then lastly is financial boundaries. Money can be a touchy subject, but let me just tell you, when I started talking about it, I think it was like really only 2 years ago, I started talking about it and getting more comfortable with it and like actively thinking about it and letting it like excite me rather than stress me out, rather than completely ignoring it and hoping for the best. When I started doing that, when I started just having open, honest conversations about money, my life and my finances and my feelings about money got so much better. So the boundaries with finances come in with like kind of like your budget, okay? So they're actively, like your time, boundaries are helping to give your money a job, a time, and a place. So they're really giving your money, like putting your money to work for you, right? So money boundaries ensure that you get both what you need coming in and you aren't stressed, or as stressed, I should say, about what's going out. So some examples of like financial boundaries would be setting and communicating clear prices. And let me just say, prices that accurately reflect the value exchange for your services. The other example of financial boundaries would be like reestablishing when you need them and communicating them. I recently had meetings with all my web designers, and I collaborate with them all the time. And I did have to kind of like reestablish some of my pricing with some of them and my minimum project requirements. So that's an example of like one of my financial boundaries. Another financial boundary, and this is something I do in my own business, apart from my retainer clients, is to have some portion of their payment be upfront. So this could be like they have to pay you the whole entire project upfront or a deposit. It really depends on like the size of your payments and what works for your clients. But giving those clear payment terms and reminders to help them avoid late payments, that's an example of setting financial boundaries. Another one is saying no to clients or projects that are not aligned with your financial goals or that are trying to undervalue your worth. I'm working on this. I recently just had one and I was like, this is not adhering to my financial boundary. It's kind of like saying, you know what, I'm not going to take on projects that are paying me less than whatever your magic number is, because they tend to expect a lot more of me for a lot less. My red flag, here's a good one. My red flag is usually when someone says, oh, it's just blah, 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 blah. It's just, okay? Or, oh, it should just be super quick and easy. What I think people don't understand is that, like, yes, writing is literally just me tapping away on a computer, sure, but writing a single sentence, no joke, I've had days where a single sentence takes me all day to write, depending on the task at hand. So just remember that. It's okay to say no when somebody isn't willing to pay for your time or your fees or adequately compensate you. And you'll learn your own red flags, right? So you'll know the things that they say to you that kind of tip you off. So reflect and consider those different types of boundaries, those areas of boundaries. And I would say this, start with the one that feels the most loose, the most leaky boundary in your life, and the one that maybe most impacts you, that you're just continuously letting people trample over time and time again. And it might be hard to see right off the bat. And not to mention, it's hard to know what to do next. So because of that, I was like, well, let's just make this easy. And here are some actual steps you can take to set better boundaries for yourself, starting today in any one of those areas. Number one is to do like a capacity inventory. I do these at the end of every year. I try to do them at the end of every quarter. And I also encourage my clients and my workshop attendees, like all of these things that I speak on. I want to help people see the big picture of everything that they're committed to. So marketing and content creation platforms, how often you create for each of those things, your business tasks for yourself, your business tasks for clients, your groups, your organizations, your events, your opportunities, your personal obligations, your family time, even those hidden commitments like the time you spend on social media or the time commuting or the errands that you're running. So like list out everything that takes up your time on a day-to-day. You may just focus on your business. That's fine. This might take up a whole page. It might take up that entire shiny new notebook you just bought to fix all of your problems. In fact, it probably will fill up a lot of space. But once you have it all down, I want you to look at that and be like, wow, I am doing a lot. And if I want time to do each of these things, I mean, some of them have to go. Some of them just have to go. But if you want genuine time to do each of these things, you have to consider how much these things are costing you emotionally, mentally, and energetically. So that's kind of where the capacity piece comes in. So like, I like to do it in my own little like hieroglyphic code. I'll give something like an ROI, which is like return on investment. So I'll say like, how much is this giving to me? And it could be in any way. It could be emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, whatever, financial. And then I'll also look at like, how much do I enjoy it on a scale of 1 to 10, like my little joy ratio. And then things that are a no-go, you can genuinely just let go of. And I really do mean that. Like there are things I'm walking away from this year that I'm like, that wasn't even, right? That I don't have capacity for it. And it wasn't mutually reciprocal or fulfilling. Anyway, that's kind of how you know like what your actual capacity is, because you probably have way more on that list than actually you do have capacity for. And I really mean like take a look at how you're feeling mentally, physically, emotionally. Then step number 2, look at this list and search for patterns of overcommitment. So my questions for you are, do you have a lot of similar commitments? Are there too many soul crushing commitments? Are you committing to a lot of things that you don't enjoy, or a lot of things that actually do not align with your goals? Are you committing too much in too little windows of time? And then look at why. Like, ask yourself why. Why am I doing each and every one of these things on this list? Even cleaning your house. So that's like one of the things on my list. Like every week I clean my house. And even cleaning your house has a big why for me. Like, it is very important to me because I love a sparkling home. I love an organized home. I love a clean home. It makes me feel really good and really happy and really positive. So look at why for every single item on your list. Like going to the grocery store, that has a why, right? Like I'm caring for my family, I'm putting food on the table, all of those things. But if you are just saying yes to say yes, look at those patterns. If you don't have a good reason behind it, a good why behind it, let's consider, okay, am I ready to let it go? Am I ready to let this go now? And you know what? I'm not going to force you to do anything. I will let you hang on to it as long as you'd like, but consider possibly letting it go. Step number 3 is, now that you've seen your inventory of everything, define what capacity actually means for you. So what are your own personal markers for capacity or full? I don't even know if I want you to be at capacity, right? But I'd love for you to be right before that point. Like, what lets you know that you've had enough? What are your mental energy levels, your physical signs? Maybe it's fatigue or tension, or your emotional cues like anxiety, irritability, resentment. Do these things change throughout the month and through the year? So for example, in summer, I want to be outside and on the go, and my capacity for sitting at my computer, working, staring at a screen is far less. So you can see, like in the summer, I want to reduce a lot of the clutter in my business operations apart from like essential client work. In the winter, lock me away, let me write all the things every day, all day. I could just like write for hours, create new things without getting tired. But my capacity for social things is, and going out and about and like doing networking things, that is way, way, way down. So again, like for those who have a period or any number of hormones playing their little evil games with you, it can wipe you out royally. And so you have to actually factor in those things in your capacity. And the goal is not to get to full. The goal is not to get to max capacity. It's like the people that let their gas tank run down to empty, right? Like I like to do it when it's like at about half full or even right before that point. So look at your capacity, define it for yourself. What is it for you? What are your signs that you're at capacity? Do you start ghosting people, dropping things, oversleeping, undersleeping, undereating, overeating, getting anxious, irritable, snap at your kids, your husband, your desk plant? Look at those things for yourself and really define it. Like, when I am at capacity, I feel this way. When I am over capacity or over full, I feel this way. And then like look at those signs in your life. That's just like an awareness you can build to help yourself know when you're getting too hot, adding on too much. Step 4 is just reframe and view boundaries as like a little self-protection, a little energy restorer. It is not a restriction, okay? Boundaries are essential. They're compassionate tools for your own capacity. They're not restrictions, they're not limits, they're not walls, they're not gates, they're none of that. You have full control, okay? No one is taking away control. They're like your own. I like boundaries because they're kind of like your own little personal incubators. You can recharge, you can keep that energy safe, you can keep that energy like how you want it, right? So you can show up more intentionally where you do decide to show up. And if you don't like them because they feel like rules or they feel like they're negative, you can frame your boundaries in the positive. Like, just trick yourself a little bit. So for example, instead of saying, oh no, I don't do evening things, or oh no, I don't take appointments on Tuesdays, you could say, I only commit to evening social events twice a month, or I keep XYZ days meeting free, or I spend X amount of money on my workshops and education for my business. Budgeting, remember, like I said, that's a financial boundary. And a very clear example of what happens when your boundaries are too loose, you can watch it happen, a lifetime, right? You start to lose money. You start to lose track of where things go. You start to give away all of those previously free days, you start to be out every single evening at those social events or networking events. So you can see there it's very helpful, nurturing, compassionate, self-protecting, energy restoring to just have boundaries in place. They're not a restriction. They're just like, oh, I'm actually just taking care of myself. Step number 6, if you cannot resist saying yes, make a script. You can create your own scripts and strategies for saying no in a way that feels right for you. I know that no can be a really hard word. If it is the hardest word ever for you to utter, or as my friend Lindsay replies back, she's great at it. She just says, you ask her to do something, she says, can't. And it's so awesome. I respect when she does that. But if that is like, no way, I could never say that to somebody. If that is too much of a hurdle for you, you can create like actual scripts that work for yourself that help you to politely decline invitations or requests. It can be phrases like, I'm at capacity, or I would love to, but I can't this time around. I always like to, if it's a friend that I am just like, oh my gosh, I really want to do that, but I know myself and I cannot do it that night. I'll say like, please don't stop asking me. I can't do it this time around. Rinse, repeat again if needed. Get ChatGPT to help you write a script if you need it for like a client or business or whatever. And if you really do want to do the thing, but it doesn't work for you, you can also remember there is great power in proposing a different time. I recently did that with a podcast guest interview. He like kept sending me these times that would not work. He was in another country. And I was like, you know what? I need a different time. That is not going to work for me. So I just asked for a different time and I set clear expectations right up front and we were off to the races. So you can do that. You can propose a different time. You can ask for more time, but really do start setting those expectations right up front on what you will and will not be doing and contributing. It's going to save you time on the back end, guilt on the back end, regret on the back end when you are having to show up to something that you don't want to or that didn't work for you in the first place. This is also where I have to shout out my friend Lindsay Dreyer for this one. This is also where automatic booking software and calendar tools come into play because they can help you to say no without having to say anything at all. As I said at the beginning, I do not do this yet. I'm considering it, but like I said, there's a lot of caveats for me and I actually don't think I can really use it too effectively. So I just have to have my own boundaries. But if a calendar is a great, booking software is a great way to just like let it say no for you. Okay. And then that can reinforce your boundaries and have your own back and you don't need to worry about it for yourself. So try that out if saying no feels really, really hard for you. I told you there were 7 steps, but this isn't really a step. It's just this. When you create time and space, when you do give yourself some boundaries, when you have space for what matters most, you will watch yourself. You will get happier and happier. Your life will get better and better. So my step, I think, you know what? Let's make it a step. My 7th step for you is to really identify your top 3 priorities for the coming year. Just pick 3 things. My top 3 priorities are X, Y, Z. I don't care if they're business. I don't care if they're personal. You pick your 3 things. What boundaries do you need to put in place to ensure that these priorities get to stay at the top of your list? We want these 3 priorities to be just that, priorities, your top 3 priorities. So that's my work for the coming year. I'm really putting in these boundaries to protect those top 3 priorities. Because for me, I want as much space as possible for what matters most to me in my life. And I'm not really enjoying the whole bouncing to and fro for the things that don't. So my work is to kind of eliminate some of those things. Okay, to wrap up, I want to give you some resources and also some practical like tools or just things I've learned to help me maintain boundaries. So one is just like setting yourself calendar reminders or even emailing yourself or using Siri reminders. Like I really like those to help me maintain boundaries, do things at certain times, use my time in a more efficient and intentional way. The other thing is just like a regular journal check-in with yourself. Like that's kind of your gauge. That can help you. That can be your gas gauge. Okay. So seeing where, oh, wow, I'm going over capacity a little bit here with these regular check-ins. Some people are going to love having an accountability buddy. So find yourself like a boundary buddy or do your own capacity audits together, right? Like every quarter, make sure that you're really upholding your boundaries and talking about it with somebody can help so much, because I can't even tell you how many times like I haven't had the courage to have my own back, but then like I talk it out with a friend and they're like, no, we are going to put this boundary in place for you. I care about you and I don't want to see you suffering. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. So get a friend. If you can't do it yourself, get a friend, get an accountability buddy. And then I also want to give you like 2 podcasts I would recommend. So my friend Lisa Zaratny, she's the host of the Positively Living podcast. I'm going to include her link in the show notes. She talks a lot about boundaries. And I also recently met Suzanne Kohlberg. She is the host of the Nope Coach podcast. And I'm going to include her link in the show notes too, because she literally helps people say nope all of the time, day in and day out, on things that are not aligned. Remember also that like boundaries are not a one and done thing. We need to reevaluate, reset, check in with ourselves regularly, and they change all of the time. So you do really need to revisit them and adjust them. Sometimes a boundary gets looser. Sometimes a boundary needs to get a little tighter, right? So that boundary that you set into place a year ago, you might realize it needs a little bit of tweaking and refining. So use these sort of like capacity markers that you set out at the beginning, and you can use them to check in on all the areas of your life from time to time to see how things are going. What is your mind telling you, your body telling you, emotions, etc., about where in your life you might be letting people trample over those boundaries. In the new year, I was thinking I would like to do an episode on how to use your website to actually like set boundaries in your business, and really how we can structure the copy on our website to help us out in some of these ways right from the get-go. So we're going to get into some of the boundaries in our businesses and like how to map those out, and then we'll talk about how to put them on our website. But today, like I said, I just kind of wanted to focus on the professional and like personal growth, I would say, piece of boundaries and like how they might show up for you in your business. Business ownership, I mean, I could repeat this, I probably will many, many times, but business ownership has been the biggest catalyst for personal growth for me. I cannot tell you a better path to self-discovery, other discovery, and like really kind of seeing real time, upfront, in your face, the things that hold you back and the things that you need to work on and overcome. So like I said, boundaries are one of these areas for me. I'm working on it often, and it can be really uncomfortable to take up space, to say no, to state what you need, to ask for another option. But again, let's not reframe it as gatekeeping. It's really prioritizing your own health, your own capacity, because the goal is that you're going to show up even better. You're going to show up even happier, more intentional, better at what you do. It's about having your own back, because you know that you do your best work when you know you are worth it. And so on that note, I'm going to read you with a great post I saw on Instagram recently. I'll link her account in the show notes, but her name is Haley Paige McGee. She's a self-advocacy coach. And I just love how she says, if you can't say no, you'll probably experience others' requests as demands. If you can't speak up when you disagree, you'll probably feel suffocated by others' differing opinions. If you never put your needs first in your relationships, you'll probably feel disregarded when others put their needs first. If we shrink ourselves for others' comfort, we might feel resentful when others don't shrink themselves for our comfort. When in truth, a healthier balance comes from giving ourselves permission to take up more space. And like I said, her name is Haley Paige McGee. I'll put that in the show notes. But remember, boundaries are not only to protect your inner energy, they also allow you to show up fully for the people in your life that you want to and have said yes to. And on that note, I will chat with you next week. I'm actually going to give you my top tips from 2024, which I think will help you heading into the new year. So I will chat with you then. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Content with Character. If you loved the episode, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast, rate, review, and share it with someone else you know it could help. For more content and visibility tips, visit my blog at emilyaborn.com, and be sure to connect with me on Instagram at emilyaborn. I'd love to hear how this inspired you to take action.